Ever looked at a Mandalorian and wondered about their history, where they originated, where their armor came from, or why they're such a violent group? Hey everyone, my name is Emma Parke, I'm a content creator with Youtini, and today we'll be taking a deep dive into the entire history of the Mandalorians in canon, as well as listing the top canon media and EU materials to find the mysterious Mandos. Let's start with an overview of the Mandalorians in canon. The best way to describe the Mandalorians is exactly how they are defined in the Disney Plus series, The Mandalorian. Mandalorian isn't a race, it's a creed. The majority of Mandalorians we see on screen are humans, but other species aren't barred from being Mandalorians based on this definition. Fighting and being an honorable warrior are central to their culture, and it gave them a fearsome reputation. The Mandalorians had a rule that whenever two individuals are involved in a conflict, they can fight each other to the death, thereby ending the conflict. They also enjoy fighting notoriously tough opponents for sport, such as Jedi. Anyone wearing Mandalorian armor is therefore greatly respected, and usually goes unprovoked since they are proficient warriors and are generally very violent. Adding to their notoriety is their wide variety of weapons. Mandalorian weapons are designed for many different purposes and goals, and Mandalorians tend to get to know how to use each and every one of them at some point in their lives. As Din Djarin says in The Mandalorian, "I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of my religion." In addition to weapons, Mandalorians are also known for their Beskar armor, which is passed down through generations of Mandalorians. It can take high amounts of damage without injuring the wearer. All of these traits make up the violent and combative reputation of Mandalorians. Like I mentioned before, there are tons of ways to experience Mandalorian lore in canon. Next, I'm going to discuss specific content and what they teach us about Mandalorians. But before we begin, I just want to mention that at the time of this recording, Chapter 12 of The Mandalorian is the most recent episode released, so there could be some additional information not contained in this video. That aside, let's dive into it. Star Wars The Clone Wars brings plenty of Mandalorian lore to canon. First, we meet Duchess Satine Kryze, the leader of Mandalore during the earlier events of the Clone Wars. Her major claim to fame was being a pacifist, which was a major difference from previous Mandalorian ideals. She is so serious about this, in fact, that she sends all of the Mandalorian warriors to Concordia, a moon outside of Mandalore. Unknown to her was that this was a breeding ground for the extremist terrorist group called Death Watch, whose main goal was to undermine Duchess Satine and reinstate the old warrior ways of Mandalore. Death Watch was supported by the Separatists, which was in direct opposition to the neutral Mandalore. Although the neutral Mandalorians were not able to receive help from the Republic to deal with this separatist threat, Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, an old friend of Satine, came to her aid. Mandalorians and Jedi have a contentious history of wars between them. When Obi-Wan comes face to face with Death Watch's leader, Pre Vizsla, he finds that he's wielding a lightsaber called the Darksaber. It was property of a Mandalorian Jedi, and during the end of the Old Republic, it was taken from the Jedi by the Mandalorians. Now, it's a symbol of a strong Mandalorian leader. More on this later. Wars were common among Mandalorians, and a civil war was what led Satine to rule without violence and remain neutral during the war between the Republic and the Separatists. She led the Council of Neutral Systems during her rule of Mandalore, which made Mandalore an important planet to the entire galaxy, as it could swing the war in either direction should it fall to either side. Death Watch teams up with Darth Maul and Savage Opress to invade Mandalore. In order to have a better chance at success, they go to different crime groups to gather an invasion army. This is the start of the formation of the group that Maul leads, called the Shadow Collective, which is made up of Death Watch Mandalorians and various crime groups. Maul's goal in helping the Death Watch is to lure Obi-Wan Kenobi to Mandalore, since Maul desperately wants revenge on him. He also wants to rule Mandalore for himself, using Prime Minister Almec as a puppet leader to make the transition go under the radar. In addition, he would also maintain control of the Shadow Collective. Vizsla, Death Watch, Maul, Opress, and the Shadow Collective easily gain control of Sundari, the capital of Mandalore. After this, Maul defeats Vizsla in combat, and by Mandalorian tradition, the victor, in this case Maul, gets to keep the Darksaber and rule Mandalore. A group of Death Watch, including Duchess Satine's sister Bo-Katan Kryze, split from the main group, refusing to accept the non-Mandalorian Maul as their leader. In the middle of all of this chaos, Duchess Satine is being kept in prison to lure Kenobi. Sure enough, Kenobi arrives on Mandalore. After some fighting and intense moments, Maul kills Satine in front of Kenobi. Things seem bleak for Obi-Wan, but Bo-Katan and the other Death Watch Mandalorians that refuse Maul's rule help him to escape. Later on in the Clone Wars, Bo-Katan finds Ahsoka Tano, who she first meets earlier when Ahsoka is on a mission with Lux Bonteri. At the time of this mission, Bo-Katan is part of Death Watch leadership alongside Pre Vizsla. The two don't get along whatsoever in this earlier encounter, but when Bo-Katan seeks Ahsoka and Obadiah, she knows they have a common enemy in Maul. At this point, Ahsoka is no longer an official Jedi, but she agrees to assist in taking back Mandalore nonetheless. They seek the help of Anakin and Obi-Wan, who have to go to save the Chancellor. As it turns out, these events take place at the exact same time as Revenge of the Sith, but the two Jedi set aside some Republic forces for Bo-Katan and Ahsoka to utilize. Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, Captain Rex, and Republic forces head to Mandalore, where an epic battle ensues. It becomes known as the Siege of Mandalore. The Republic and Mandalorian resistance take down Maul and the Death Watch Mandalorian super commandos after an intense amount of fighting on the planet. Maul is captured and is removed by the Republic and Ahsoka. Bo-Katan and the remaining Mandalorian resistance group are left on Mandalore to reassess and rebuild. This is the last we see of Mandalorian history in the Clone Wars. Now, for canon EU Mandalorian content, is Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. This 4-issue miniseries continues the events of the end of the Clone Wars episode The Lawless, in which Maul becomes ruler of Mandalore and fights Sidious. In terms of Mandalorian content in this miniseries, there is some good action involving Maul's Death Watch. We meet Mandalorian Super Commando Gar Saxon, who plays a prominent role in the Mandalorian lore in Star Wars Rebels. Additionally, this miniseries adds some subtle hints regarding the Death Watch Mandalorian Super Commando's feelings towards Maul. It's one of the only pieces of Star Wars Canon EU content to feature Mandalorians in some major way, as of the date of this recording. Like its predecessor, Star Wars Rebels also adds much to the history of the Mandalorians. The Ghost Crew consists of one Mandalorian member, Sabine Wren, and she's in a vast majority of episodes. Because of this, we do learn plenty of Mandalorian history in Rebels because of what Sabine brings to the table. The first we see of other Mandalorians is on Concord Dawn, which is an offshoot of Mandalore but in a different system. The Rebels were looking for a new travel route through this system, and when the Rebel group goes to scope it out, they encounter a group of Mandalorians called the Protectors, who are supposedly only loyal to Mandalore, but are actually in league with the Empire. The Protectors were led by Fen Rao, who used to be a pilot for the Republic. The Protectors weren't interested in diplomacy and were quick to violence. Eventually, the Rebels capture Rao, and as a result, they gained access to the route. Later on, the Rebels lost contact with the Protectors, and the Rebels find that the base has been destroyed. It's important to note that at this time, Mandalore was controlled by the Empire. Gar Saxon was the Imperial Viceroy of Mandalore, and he also led a group of Imperial Supercommandos. These Supercommandos were the ones that destroyed the Protector's base. This betrayal caused Fen Rao to voluntarily join the Rebels. Later on, Star Wars Rebels takes us to Dathomir, where Sabine finds the Darksaber. Kanan asks Fen Rao about the history of the Darksaber, and his response is perhaps one of the most jam-packed lore moments in all of canon. The Darksaber signifies the leader of House Vizsla, and it later signified the leader of Death Watch. It's over 1,000 years old and was constructed by Tar Vizsla, who happened to be the first Mandalorian Jedi. When he died, the Jedi kept the saber in the Jedi Temple, but later, Vizsla Mandalorians stole it. After that theft, Mandalorians were brought together for the first time in a long while. The ruler that unified the Mandalorian clans wielded the saber, and the Darksaber was thereafter seen as an object that brought unity to the entirety of the Mandalorians, at least for a while. Since whoever wields the Darksaber is incredibly respected by other Mandalorians, the Ghost Crew asks if Sabine would be willing to train with it so that she may raise an army of loyal Mandalorians to join the rebel cause. She agrees, and Kanan and Ezra train Sabine how to wield the saber effectively. During this training, Fen Rao gives Mandalorian vambraces to Sabine, which have functions designed to both mimic and deter Jedi powers. We see Sabine use these in conjunction with the Darksaber later on. Once her training was completed, Sabine goes back to her homeworld of Crownest, with Ezra, Kanan, Chopper, and Fen Rao, wielding the Darksaber to try to convince her clan to leave the Empire and use their forces and resources for the rebellion. Gar Saxon arrives on Crownest after hearing about the presence of rebels, and he fights Sabine. Sabine defeats Saxon in combat, and Sabine's brother Tristan kills him. Later, Ezra and Kanan meet up with Sabine and Clan Wren on Mandalore, on a mission to free Sabine's father Ulrich from the Empire. A major battle ensues, and it looks like the Empire has the group pinned down. Then, Clan Kryze, led by Bo-Katan Kryze, joins the fight against the Empire and saves the group from capture. They fight together until they free Ulrich. During the time between saving Ulrich and meeting Clan Kryze, Sabine tries to give the Darksaber to Bo-Katan so that she could lead Mandalore due to her leadership experience, but Bo-Katan turns it down. On another front of the same battle, the Empire uses an arc reactor weapon against Clan Ren, which disintegrates most of the Mandalorians while leaving their armor intact. Upon investigation, it is revealed that Sabine created the weapon and named it the Duchess, after Duchess Satine Kryze. Sabine invented the weapon while at the Imperial Academy, and it works by targeting the Beskar in the Mandalorian armor so that it only affects Mandalorians but doesn't affect anyone else. When discussing how to avoid it being used against them, it's suggested to change the type of armor that they wear. However, it's revealed that Mandalorian armor is passed down through generations of Mandalorians and reshaped to each wearer, so that wouldn't be a viable option. Instead, Sabine decides she will destroy the weapon herself. After infiltrating a Star Destroyer, Sabine destroys the weapon using the Darksaber and was supported by the leadership of Bo-Katan, while a separate group destroyed the plans for the weapon. Sabine insists that Bo-Katan take the Darksaber, and she reveals to Bo-Katan the number of Mandalorians that support her as their leader. The last we see of the Mandalorians in Rebels is Bo-Katan holding up the Darksaber in front of a sea of Mandalorian supporters. Like I mentioned before, as of the time of this recording, we've only seen up to Chapter 12 of The Mandalorian, so just bear that in mind as I go over the Mandalorian lore that can be gleaned from this show. One of the most notable attributes of the titular character of The Mandalorian is that he doesn't ever take off his helmet. Based on the Clone Wars and Rebels, we know that Mandalorians do in fact take off their helmets, but the Mandalorian and the other Mandalorians in his covert on Navarro don't ever remove their helmets, because this is the way. In his covert, there's an armorer who uses any Beskar that can be found to make new pieces of armor. The Beskar can be used as payment as it's very valuable. She mentions that the Beskar was taken from the Mandalorian people during the Great Purge. The armorer and the Mandalorian discuss foundlings, which are people not initially born into being a Mandalorian, but are adopted into the group. The Mandalorian is an example of a foundling. Moff Gideon seems to know a lot about the past of the Mandalorian, as well as Mandalorian history in general. He reveals the Mandalorian's real name, which is Din Djarin. He also knows that Din Djarin survived during the Siege of Mandalore, which we see take place during the Clone Wars, and he also lived through the Night of 1,000 Tears, which was a slaughtering of Mandalorian recruits. Moff Gideon also wields the Darksaber, which, at the time of recording, was last in the hands of Bo-Katan, and as of yet we do not know how she lost it. When Din Djarin shows the armorer the child and tells her that it has special powers, she tells him about wars between Mandalore the Great and the Jedi. She tasks him with finding the Jedi, declares the child a foundling, and makes Din Djarin and the child a clan. In order to find the child's people, or Jedi, Din Djarin searches for other Mandalorians across the galaxy to help him with his task. On his journey, he and the child get into some trouble on Trask, where some Quarren are attempting to steal his armor and harm the child. 3 Mandalorians save Djarin and the child. The leader of this trio is Bo-Katan Kryze. Din Djarin is startled when they remove their helmets, and Bo-Katan tells him that he's a child of the Watch. The Watch is a cult that are extremists in comparison to typical Mandalorians. Din Djarin and the 3 Mandalorians have a conversation about Djarin's mission. Bo-Katan offers information about the Jedi in return for his assistance on a mission. After the mission, Bo-Katan tells Din Djarin to go to the planet Corvus to find Ahsoka Tano. As of the time of the recording of this video, this is the last piece of Mandalorian lore that we have from this show, but it certainly won't be the last. I cannot wait to see what happens next with Mandalorian history. So, what do you think about the history of the Mandalorians? What's your favorite canon Mandalorian content? Did we miss anything? Let us know in the comments below. You can find links in the description for Youtini's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Youtini merch, as well as Twitch, where we have weekly live streams. We would be honored if you would join us. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you, or more appropriately, this is the way.